Hello and welcome to Connotation Points Video Snark. I'm continuing my sarcastic book review of The Mister by E.L. James. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 15. She's overwhelmed with sensation and a bone-deep fatigue, but most of all by his invasion. This is an actual quote from the book, immediately following their fun times. Literally the only word that Elisa can describe it is invasion. Literally the only word James wanted to use in her romance novel was this word, why. Max asks if she is okay if he hurt her. When Elisa doesn't exactly respond to the second, Max panics. He pulls out from her and is surprised that there's evidence of her lack of experience on the anti-baby device. He says that her mother had told her that it would hurt the first time, but is positive that doing it again would mean less pain. Max is excited by the prospect of doing it again with her because, as he says, with her is better than being amped up on any drug, any day. I don't even have a response for that. Why? Max gets up to run them a bath. As he's doing that, he thinks about being with her physically again, and his Max Jr. starts to take on a life of its own. Ew. Let's stop this before it gets out of hand like it did in Grey. But Max also thinks about that blood and how he should probably marry her, not because it's necessarily the right thing to do or because they're in love, but because of his title. And I get that nobles used to have a lot of social pressure to do certain things, like not to mess around with other women and produce unwanted offspring outside of marriage. But this takes place in the 21st century, and the fact that Max is worried about stuff like that is absurd, especially when he didn't think twice about betting all of those women at the beginning of the book. He says that he has to think about this now because Kit is dead, but he didn't care about that in chapter 1 and Kit was dead then too. The bath now full, Max goes to get Elisa. She's shy upon realizing that Max is naked and he tells her to stare. He coaxes her from bed and they won't stop flirting with each other. He puts her into the bath and leaves, although where he went is a mystery as we switch over to Elisa's point of view. As she watches herself, she thinks about what she just did with Max, and then about what her father might think. And I probably should say something about her obsessing over what her father would think, but I'm not even sure if I should summon up the energy if her father isn't going to make an appearance in this. But just to give you a taste of it, men obsessing over their daughter's virginity is predatory, borderline incestuous, and belongs in the 12th century. Max comes back with champagne and gets into the bath with her once he pours him a glass of it. Elisa is simultaneously fascinated with, yet embarrassed by his Max Jr. They toast to first. Elisa asks if his family name is my lord, since she's heard a lot of people calling him that. He explains his name to her without explaining why they're calling him my lord. Max then washes Elisa's feet, and I try really hard not to yuck on somebody else's yum, but this is a big helping of yuck for me. I've read a lot of romance novels, seen a lot of weird and questionable things, mermaid stuff with a minotaur, stuff with a literal bull, barely batting an eyelash over that stuff in comparison to this. They get out of the tub, but Elisa's attitude quickly cools when Max mentions Danny coming over with their dinner soon. Max thinks about Elisa as he gets ready to have dinner. He wonders what Kit would have thought about her. You're not fucking staff, are you, Spare? We haven't seen much of Kit's personality, but I found it hard to believe that he would have been so cruel as to call people the staff and his literal brother the Spare. I really hope that this is Max just being hard on himself and not something that Kit would have actually said. Although Max follows this up by deciding that although Kit wouldn't have approved of Max fooling around with the staff, he would have liked Elisa, if only because she's pretty. Not because she's smart or useful or anything. Nope, Elisa's usefulness and likability revolve around her attractiveness to men, which kind of the theme of this romance, isn't it? Danny shows up with their food. I'm not quite sure what her role in Max's life is specifically, except that she's been a feature since he was a boy. She's also a lesbian, if that's of any interest to anybody. I'm not sure that it's relevant to anything, but sure. Max has to preparing the food that Danny's lover made, but then gets distracted by playing Elisa at chess. She downplays her ability, and he's somehow surprised that she's amazing at it. Elisa explains that there isn't much to do in her hometown. An old computer, no video games, and only some TV. Mainly just a lot of books, both in English and Albanian. Max is surprised when she says that she wanted to teach English and wonders how it is that she could have fallen so far. It was desperation, or were you so busy trying to get into her pants that you missed her entire backstory? Anyway, she beats him at chess and he promises that it will be their first and last game together. They go to eat and Max gets turned on watching Elisa set out the dishes for the meal. Honestly, this guy would get turned on with a puff of wind. One day he says, "Will you tell me the whole story?" Story, her heart begins to thud, of how and why you came to England. She has literally already told him everything that he needs to know. I mean, maybe not the exact specifics, but enough for him to piece things together. The university closed, no work, a scammer who wanted to be a pimp to girls. What more could he possibly want from her? After they finish their main course, he starts to feed her the banana toffee and cream dessert, and nope, I thought that the earlier foot scene was just because it's kind of an anti-kink for me, but I think that it's more James's really off-putting writing, which don't know why I'm surprised because 50 Shades had the same kind of really terrible adult content. And I think that I stated this in an earlier video, but James has apparently felt no need to grow as an author. Anyway, Max and Elisa go back upstairs where he coaxes her into undressing him. He does the same to her and gets her off with his mouth. He then picks her up and starts to do it against the wall. And considering all of the fuss that they made when the first time with Max's anti-baby device, I can't help but note that he's not using one now. So I guess he decided that it doesn't matter? Or did James simply decide that she no longer cared? At least this lasts longer than their first time together. Not like it's hard to last longer than 2 seconds. She falls asleep in his arms, and nowhere does it state that they actually went back to bed, so I'm just imagining that he's sitting there staring at the sleeping Elisa, who is sleeping upright. He watches her and marvels over how special that this relationship feels. Although it's hardly his first time, he says that no other relationship ever felt like this before, which... Ugh. Chapter 16. The next morning, Max decides to forgo church in favor of taking Elisa shopping. However, he seems certain that once he tells Elisa who he actually is, that his opinion on attending church might change. And Max keeps putting off telling her about this to the point where I feel like this is going to drive a wedge to the relationship. I mean, there's no reason for being together is that 50 Shades reasoning, and they really only seem to have their physical attraction to one another as to why they're even together. But still, I literally don't even care if Elisa thanks him for his help and they never see each other again. They drive out to another village to buy Elisa clothes, and I don't know why he couldn't have just gotten her a few things in his own village, but whatever, I don't really care anymore. However, in the town, Max says that he's buying her clothes, but Elisa seems to think that this is only because she slept with him. He insists that he had promised to buy her new things before that happened, but neither of them are really saying anything about the possibility of payment for him having helped her escape from Dante. And I know, he said that he was doing it without expectation of payment, but the fact that she seems to think that the clothes are a thanks for having slept with him, it wouldn't surprise me if she was expecting to pay Max back for having rescued her. They go into a clothing store and Max feels so out of his element. Somebody who works there starts to help Elisa. Max thinks about how he'd been shopping with other women before, but they always knew what they wanted, what size that they were, all that stuff. The book spends way too much time on this, of Max looking at Elisa in various clothes, and once they're finished with the clothing, they go and buy some new shoes. And again, so much time is spent on this. There is literally nothing happening. Literally none of this is relevant. This could have been summed up and we could have moved on to something else. However, the longer that they continue to shop, the more money that Max spends on her, the worse Elisa feels about the entire thing. He finally convinces her to tell him what's wrong over lunch, and she tries her best. She says that she feels indebted to him, and there is literally no way for her to ever possibly pay him back. Furthermore, she continues to worry about what her father might think about her behavior of her accepting clothing from a man that she is not married to. She also feels like she's a burden to Max and tries to tell him that her problems aren't his, but he says that it isn't like that and he wants to know that she's okay. I don't want her gratitude. I think she's got some old-fashioned notion about being my mistress, and what her father has to do with us, I don't know. It's 2019, not 1819. Look, I get it. I'm frustrated with Elisa's constant thoughts about her father too. At the same time, this is clearly a legitimate worry for her and something that she's not going to just magically overcome just because he tells her not to worry about it. You and I know that it's the 21st century, but the things Elisa says indicate that Albania is stuck in the Middle Ages, or at least according to James anyway. I'm still calling shenanigans over the idea of Elisa not knowing what a credit card is, or the fact that Albania is that backwards of a country. Max feels bad over the entire situation and decides that he wants to win Elisa's heart over which, okay, sure, why not? Thanks for listening to my Book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because sometimes I drop random videos on other days too. You can like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss a single video. While you're waiting for the next video, you can go check out all my other videos. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main Book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, and you can find even more Snarks on my Patreon, you can access it for $1 a month. Plus, you get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, you either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $3 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, $3 for every 5,000 words. You can contact me on Tumblr if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have 19 erotic short stories, 1 short story collection, and 1 full-length novel. I also sometimes run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you know when I might be offering more things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!